Alright, everybody, we are live for another Game Dev Cast here on the Game Wisdom channel, where we have returning guests from Level Design Lobby, Max Pears, on, and we're going to be discussing level design and combat in honor of his first book that he just published. So, Max, thank you for coming back on, and congratulations on joining the Writers Club, I guess.
I'm working on the secret handshake, mate, to prove I'm an official writer.
There we go.
But no, thank you very much, mate. Thank you for having me, and thank you for, welcoming me, because we spoke earlier. I know you've released some books as well, so no, it's a crazy feeling, a great feeling, and yeah, very, very happy overall.
Yeah, we were just discussing right now, for those of you who are new, I am working on book 3, and I have book 4 to do right after that. My summer is work. I don't take summers off anymore. It's just work during the fall, work during the summer, just constant work.
Maybe a workaholic, mate. That could be it.
It is great to have you back on. Like we said, we're going to be discussing level design and combat. And this is definitely an interesting discussion. Before we get into it, for anyone new joining us, whether live or recorded, could you talk very briefly about your background and what your YouTube channel is for people?
Sure thing, mate. So my name is Max Pears, as you mentioned. I am a professional level designer. I've been in the industry for around about 7 years now, give or take a month. And I've worked at studios working on mobile games, formerly Fog Media. I then worked at Ubisoft working on Division and the DLC around that. And then currently where I am is at CD Projekt Red, CD Projekt Red, working on Cyberpunk. Obviously, we can't talk about that, but we're here to talk about the book, and also the podcast for anyone who's interested is myself breaking down that of level design and game design and talking about kind of the experiences I've had through the industry, sharing what I've learned through it to hopefully inspire as well as help others who want to get into the industry or improve their own skills within level design, mate. So yes, that's what Level Design Lobby is about, and we also get to do great team ups with yourself, mate, like here.
Awesome. So I had a chance to thumb through some of the book you sent me an early copy, so I read a little bit of it, and I know I saw some of your posts on Gamma Sutra. So Let's Design Combat is kind of like the culmination, or kind of like the collection of a lot of your musings and thoughts that you posted over there.
Yeah, exactly. I never thought I'd write a book. I don't know if it was always on your mind, mate, but for myself, it wasn't really there. And it was at the time where people were asking if I would write a book, and I never really felt that confident in it, or not sure how to write it. There's so many great writers out there and teachers. I was always like, I don't know what I feel I could add. And then it was around about the time, as you mentioned, on Gamma Sutra and leveldesign.org, I was writing a mini series on combat, just overall design of it, and especially how it implements, well, how it impacts, should I say, that of level design. And I found that I was like, well, this seems to be getting a very good response. I'm being asked, people are constantly asking, you should write a book about, just about level design in general. So I thought, what, let's give it a try, because combat especially is something that I've been working on for a while and trying to get better. It was an element I knew that I needed to improve upon myself in order to be a better level designer. And after thinking about it more and more, I kind of started to realize what it was that I needed to do, what makes good combat scenarios. And then, it just came down. I was like, all right, I'm going to write a book. We're just going to do it now. People have been asking. I feel that I have the support. And yeah, and that's how it came to be. Nervous, and luckily though, it's turned out well. The response has been overwhelming, and I'm really happy that people are enjoying it.
Good to hear. And yeah, level design is another one of those very interesting topics when we talk about game design in general, because it's not, the two definitely go hand in hand. They have their own unique quirks and elements. From where I said, when we talk about game design, we're talking about the overall systems, what goes into a game, the mechanics. When we talk about level design, this is more about how do we take all that crazy stuff we came up with and build something with it. And as just a very interesting aside, I'm working on a presentation about learning level design using Mario Maker 2. That will be presenting at a virtual library next week. And
congratulations, mate.
Thank you. But the challenge is I have to build a Mario Maker level to show it off. And I'm running into this issue where I'm making it so hard I can't solve my own level. And that's going to be very awkward to talk to teens about. Saying, build level design, I can't beat my own level. That'll be a very great conversation.
I mean, the thing is though, you've really captured, I guess, the Mario Maker theme, though, in the sense, because a lot of levels that you find on Mario Maker tend to be some of the most ridiculously hard levels that you've ever seen, especially in terms of it being an actual Mario game. It's taken from the world. But yeah, no, I'd love to see you do it. Hopefully, you actually get to finish it before you get to go over to it. But yeah, no, there's a lot of thought that goes into it, and yeah, it's as you said, mate. It's about us taking what game designers have come up with, the systems, as well as working so well with that of either Quest or your narrative designers to make sure that you actually tell the story that you want inside the level, and also with the environment artists too, who also do a phenomenal job. But yes, what makes a great level comes from not only just the level designers, as you said, but other amazing disciplines too.
Now, with your book, is this focusing primarily on shooter-based combat, or just combat in games in general?
So it will be more shooter focused, just because that's the genre that I've worked in primarily. I do intend to come back and either do a second book or a second edition to talk about more close quarter combat. Now, there are some things you can still apply from that book to close range combat. But again, primarily, this is more about long range and distance combat.
Yeah, and that's why I was thumbing through about stuff like cover-based systems. I think one part of the book that I find very interesting, I think this could probably be its own cast in of itself, is designing the arena battle, or designing the space of combat. As you said, you have a background, you were doing level design with the Division and the expansion of it. And that game in particular, and what we see from a lot of kind of the, I guess, quote-unquote role-playing shooter kind of design, is that tricky balance of you want to make combat feel very dynamic, very interesting, but in the same vein, if you're not hiding behind a chest-high wall, you're going to be, torn to ribbons by an enemy, by an elite, or something along those lines. And like you said a minute ago, it's a very interesting challenge about how do you take all these elements you put together and not only design the space that can be best used in, but the actual encounter itself. So I'm going to kind of throw the mic over to you, and what are your thoughts, and how do you convey that in the book?
Yeah. So in terms of how do we convey the information, one of the things that I'm very proud of with the book is the fact that we have a very distinct visual style of how the book looks. We wanted to focus on it feeling like it was its own editor, in a sense. When you look at the way that the text is contained, it looks like that of an editor properties window, perhaps. And then if you look at the diagrams, which really help to expand upon and elaborate and demonstrate the points that we make in the book, it looks very much like with the UI in the top right-hand corner that it is in that of the editor. And one of the reasons we wanted it to make it look so very much editorish, shall we say, for the lack of a real word, is because the fact that everything you see in that book, we want it to feel like you could instantly apply. Everything that you read, you can go, oh, okay, so I will need to add, which we'll break in a little bit later, is, as you just mentioned, how to do a good combat arena. We can talk about that of, say, what makes a good space with decision points, and how that, for example, how you can see it in the book for the example there, and then instantly apply it into your own level in a very bare bones. You see it, you understand it right off the bat, and that was a big focus for us, especially when making the book. Is that, again, you can just apply it, because a lot of the times I feel that books use references from other games or mediums, which is great. It's brilliant. But as you know yourself, mate, as an author, getting the print right can sometimes cause the issue, and it costs more to get. This is, some things that people don't realize. It costs more to get stuff printed in color. You never know what might be the issue with trademarking when using other people's references or works. And that was another thing with the fact that we have so many amazing people on stuff like Twitter, as well as Gamma Sutra, other amazing places where there are designers sharing their knowledge, that block outs are kind of being more and more accepted and presented, with hashtag Blocktober as well. So that kind of made me go, do you know what? We shouldn't necessarily. I reference games by just talking about them in examples, but the pictures should be that of our own images, and again, keep it to that block out, because that's what level designers should be expected to show in their portfolios, as well as that's what they're going to be working with when they get inside the industry too. So I really wanted it to feel like that element, so it really feels like it is communicating on a very understandable basis, as well as being, like I said, a unique part of this book that you won't find that style in any other series but that of my own. So yeah, that's how the art and the delivery of the book is coming across, and what we aimed for. Now, in terms of your second question about what makes a good combat area, I state this in the book, and I'll state this again. Not every combat is obviously the same. You gave a great example with Division. If you compare that to Doom, then the 2016 and the one that just released earlier as well, Doom Infinite, that's always about fast pace. There isn't such thing as cover, because they want to encourage you to make sure that you go off and you go interact with the enemies, get right up in their face, and constantly kill. So it really depends on the core of your game. What is the combat feel? Do you keep it slow and methodical, something like The Division, where it's about tactics, working with your teammates to strategize? Or do you want to make it more Doom, fast pace, we're not slowing down, you need to kill in order to get the best setups there is? These kind of elements. And for that, though, I think they all do follow some common themes. So one of the things we talk about, and I just referenced earlier, was that of decision points, right? This should be a point where the player enters into the combat arena, can first see part of your arena. I do not recommend having them see all of it, just because if they see all of it, then there is no challenge, there's no surprise. So if you allow them to see like half or a quarter of the arena, okay, I see that there's 3 enemies down here, I can strategize on how do I tackle the problem, which is those 3 enemies. Not only that, though, with decision points, it's balancing them, making sure that they are not too overpowered, if you will, because the reason that they can become overpowered is if there's too much cover, there's no way for the enemies to reach the player, it ends up turning into a sniper spot, a camping area, which isn't what you want. Another element to help, I think really helps, and it definitely distinguishes the difference between like a junior level designer to that of a more experienced level designer. It's not the only thing, just for the record, but it's something that I think always is an important part, is how do you break up the combat with height? Because if you tend to find it's all flat level, that isn't as challenging or as engaging. It's more engaging for the player to have to shoot up or shoot down, going left to right, but also going up and down is also a real big part of the challenge and the cool factor for it. So if you can add in some height, maybe the enemy's reinforcements come at a higher level than the player, so now the player is at a disadvantage because it's easier to shoot down than it is to shoot up. These kind of elements that come through with it, mate. As well as stuff like flanking routes, making sure that there's routes for not just the player to use and take advantage of, but also the enemies themselves too, so it forces the player to move around. Another one isn't just necessarily that comes with that of the layout of the environment, but it also comes with the fact of what kind of enemies are you using as well, because the enemies can force the player to move and kind of react in different ways. So these are some of the strong elements that I think come into it. Now there's more that I reference in the book, but those are some that I do believe help. So anyone listening, those should be some part of it too. And also metrics. Just always understand your metrics, team, because the sooner you understand them, the better, because you need to understand how much space a weapon needs in terms of its range, how big, for example, the player and the enemies are, how fast they move. So again, you can create that as well as have enough space for players to strafe and not get hit or caught on anything too. So yeah, those are some of the examples made that I believe make that of a good arena.
All right. And I'm just wondering, how long did it take you to write the book?
Longer than I expected, is what I'll say. So it took me in total about 7 months. And I think the reason it came to that was a couple of things. First, it was nailing down that art style, as I said. That took longer than I expected. We got through the iterations relatively quick, but it still took some time because originally we had, and I mentioned earlier, it's not just necessarily how the images look, but it's also how the layout of the text is presented too. And we also focus that on color theory as well. If you look through the chapters, there's 3 main chapters in the book, which is planning, block out, and iteration. And I focus on these mainly for the reasons that this is how the best way that you should probably work and probably will work when you're creating your levels when you're in the industry too. But we looked at color theory as well. The first chapter is yellow, second chapter is orange, and the final chapter is red, kind of ramping up, because those are the colors that are related to that of more combat, anger, rage, these sort of things. So it feels like you're getting into the flow of combat too. I also found that I rewrote this book twice because I wanted to try and find my voice. I'm sure that's something you'll know about as well, mate. Is you don't want to sound like someone else when you're writing it, and you kind of want to sound, in the sense of who you are normally. And because of the fact that I have the podcast of the Level Design Lobby, I didn't want it to come across where it's me telling the reader what to do. I want it to come across more of a conversational tone, because the fact is, design doesn't necessarily have hard rules due to the fact, again, every game is different. There are more guidelines than there are rules. And I even say in the book, once you know the guidelines, you can start to play with them. So I was just trying to look for that. So yeah, 7 months in total. But again, I think when I do the next books, it'll be quicker next time. But this was a huge learning curve for myself, really, mate.
Yeah, man, as you said earlier, like, the nightmare of image sourcing is real, and that's something I've been putting in the back of my head and trying to ignore, but it's going to happen probably next month, because the book is due at the end of August for me.
Oh, okay, wow. And I was going to say, because you're much faster, how do you find that you're able to, like, what's your process, mate? Just because I'm interested.
I think for me, one thing I would do is try to get the outline established as early as possible. So I have all the chapters and the sections all laid out, and then it's just a matter of kind of focusing on each chapter at a time. And typically it doesn't change that much, but I'm fine with this book that I'm coming up with like new topics and kind of moving things around. But I think like the most important thing for me is just having like that sense of organization set. So I'm not just kind of like, writing blindly as to what I want to talk about. Yeah.
So, I mean, it's always interesting, right, isn't it? Because, you host this show as well, mate. And you also write your articles too. But writing an article, I find, is so different to actually writing a book as well, which was a huge difference for me, because I've had this past with writing articles, but the book felt so different when it comes to writing.
Yeah, it's interesting. We are just completely free to do whatever you want. And thank you, Cosmic, for the super chat there. Thank you so much. and speaking about chat, Oliver Walker, I'm so sorry, said where do they get their copies signed?
I know, Oliver. Don't worry, mate. We will get you a copy signed once kind of the free movement comes a little bit back into practice, and I head back over to the UK. We'll meet up, and I'll definitely sign it for you, mate. Sure.
I need to start offering the option for my books too.
Well, I was gonna say it's not even an option. I'm just flying over there, but no, it's also strange in a good way that someone asks for you to sign the book. Because I don't know about you, but it feels kind of surreal and also a bit odd to me when someone asks that. Not in a rude manner or anything like that, but more of, I'm like, oh, like you want that. It's very, very nice that you would want that, you know.
Yeah.
So
Unfortunately, all my purchases have been virtual, so I haven't had a chance to do anything in person, signing a book. The closest I got was when I went to a book fair and the person asked me, "Is this book all about gambling?" Like, no, it's games, not gaming.
He's there like, oh, you're gonna help me win all this money, right? Yeah, that's what the book's for.
Yeah, that's it. And for anyone watching this, again, if you are new, I'm currently offering a promotion. Anyone who donates $15 or more by the end of August will get an acknowledgement in my third book. So if you want to be immortalized in a book on roguelike design, now is your opportunity.
Get involved, everyone.
Yeah. Now, going back to the topic, I'm just reading the chat there.
Yeah.
Yeah, about level design in like PUBG. I think that's a very interesting comment about battle royale style games, because battle royale is technically an arena-based shooter. It's just a very, very wide arena, and I think one thing that I don't think we really have enough. We haven't really discussed. I'm sure it's something you've talked about on your channel, is about the environment when it comes to level design. You mentioned this a few minutes ago, but that idea that it's not just you placing, here's a random bike or here's a random box, but about thinking about, okay, where do I want players to set up? Where do I want sight lines to be? And very importantly, as you said, with focusing on kind of mid to long range combat, about sniping. Because as anyone who's played a Call of Duty or a Battlefield knows, it can be very annoying to get into a sniping fight with somebody, and once they're entrenched, how the hell do you get them out? And I'm sure there are many rage-related videos on YouTube and Twitch of people dealing with just that.
Yeah, I mean, I still remember, was it Modern Warfare 2? I think it's called like Pipeline or something. But there was always a great sniper point where you just, if you had the ghillie suit on, you just lied in the grass just outside of where most of the combat took part in, and you could just camp there forever until someone found you. So yeah, there's always that. But I mean, with battle royales, the great thing is because the fact that that circle shrinks, it forces players to move, which is a good thing in many ways. But again, the opportunities in terms of line of sight is so much more in a battle royale than most levels, shall we say, like especially in is it Warzone, Call of Duty Warzone? That's the one that I've played the most in terms of the battle royale genre. The fact that you can get onto these high buildings by the use of helicopters and see so far around you, like 360 degrees as well, is impressive in terms of the performance that you need for that, but also how do you balance that, the amount of cover that they have. And it seems very much, and now I've not worked on one of these, so I'm only just going through from what I think happens. So if I'm wrong, someone please let me know I'm wrong. Is that a lot of times it seems that they section off the maps and give them to a specific team, LD and environment artist, for example, to kind of focus on each section and eventually bring them together, because the maps are so huge to expect, just one LD to work on that, is such a high demand. So I imagine they section it off and make it from there. But I mean, I love Warzone's design in terms of maps, and Apex. Those two were some of the best in terms of level design in those battle royale. The fact that not only did you get a sense of what the space was, each space felt different enough that it was recognizable, and also how you moved through those spaces for those type of combat was very impressive there.
And one other question I was just thinking about when it comes to this kind of design is about, as you said, like fast versus slow pace combat.
Yes.
And like Battle Royale in particular is very interesting in that regard, because it tends to be built on these kinds of spurts or these sprints of combat. You can go 10-15 minutes, do nothing, or be like, closely trying to sneak up on somebody, and then it turns into like a 30 to 40 second firefight, and then we're back to normal. Like with your book and with your thoughts on level design, what is different from a level designer's perspective when you're designing for fast-paced combat versus a slow pace?
Yeah. So it depends really on the type of space, right? If you want fast pace, there's a few things that you can do. It can be that of less cover, because it means now you're battling to get to cover if you say that's what you're using it for. So that really encourages players to find that cover right off the bat, or they will charge the other player right as fast as they can to get the surprise in them. And also it's about the space as well. If you looked at Modern Warfare's, or the original Modern Warfare's death matches, there's one that I can't remember the name of it. Is it Cargo or something? Where it's just all these containers. It's very small as well. So how you seclude the players together, like how big do you want it? Because you mentioned if we're in a battle royale map, the map's so huge sometimes that you can go 10, 20 minutes sometimes, depending obviously on the game pace, without running into anyone. But like we talked about, they section it off, where if those combats happen, stuff like in the firehouses or warehouses, there's not much that you can really use in terms of running away, because all the cover is in those kind of contained areas. So if you decide to run and try to escape, you're more exposed. So by keeping that in, they make it so it's a faster duel to the death. Not only that, but it also, think about the damage. If you look at Rainbow Six Siege, it's only a couple of bullets and it's game over as well. Again, their maps are much smaller. It can sometimes just be that of a house versus what we see in Battle Royale. So in terms of the size, lack of cover, and also it really depends on game mechanics in terms of health as well. That can change it. Because if you think about Overwatch, although you constantly fight, those battles can drag out because of the fact that you have different combinations of enemies, different kind of heroes have different health, versus like the example of Rainbow Six Siege, where it doesn't matter what hero you are, your health is roughly the same. So like I said, it can end very quickly. So those are the elements that really can switch up the pace for combat.
And what you just said there about kind of like different powers and different abilities, that's another really important aspect of level design. As we said, like when you're building a level, you need to take into account all the various abilities and mechanics you've come up with. And this becomes, exponentially more complicated when we evolve beyond just standard run and gun play. If you look at something like Doom Eternal, for instance, where you have, double jump, you have a dash, you have multiple weapons, you have those different powers that you get access to, like the flamethrower, chainsaw, etc. And suddenly you have to build your level to accommodate all that. We talk about something like Control from Remedy, where you have the ability to grab, you have telekinesis, you can float, you can create shields, and you have to build levels to make sense of that. And even like with something like with Mario Maker, and as we said earlier, like there are people doing insane things in that game, and a lot of that's just figuring out, how do I use all these very weird items and objects and make something crazy out of it. And I've watched like streamers, Grand Pooh Bear, Barb, a lot of the big time creators, and especially like Kaizo Hacks, and there's just some insane stuff that they have come up with, and again built off of this background of Mario. Like again, you wouldn't think that Mario would be open to this kind of just like nightmarish design, but there you go.
It's interesting, especially when you say with Mario, because I've watched a few as well myself, and it's again interesting watching it from my side of the table, being a professional level designer. And when I say that, I don't mean anyone who's making mods or anything is beneath or anything like that. I want to make that avidly clear. But like you said, their design philosophy is so very different, right? Because the fact that the Mario level designer is the one who actually will go on to make stuff like the new Paper Mario that just released, or Mario Odyssey. They will not push necessarily the crazy like that. And a lot of the times you find that is because they care more about the sense of flow, if you will, of the level, of how you come through, how you go through it, and making sure that the level's flow is open to nearly every player, while the craziness of the creators over there, you know, it's a real badge of honor if you're able to finish their levels, if you're able to surpass these, you know, for lack of a better term, torturous levels in a good way. That's their focus. So I think that's always interesting, because our perspectives are so different, right? They don't need to worry also about, like, if your game is so frustrating and then people don't like it. I mean, luckily we have seen that there are markets for that. The whole From Software archives deliver on that front. But when you think about Mario, their target audience is that of younger children. And to see these content creators go off and make great levels but just not care, because it's not going to be always played by children, and like I said, it's a badge of honor. So to see their design focus and philosophies differ so much is it's fascinating. Very fascinating stuff.
And I think what you just said there is a very interesting point about that difference between designing a level as a challenge and designing levels for a commercial product. Because that is, I think, one of those I think that's where we start to get to some of the more finer points of level design. Because, again, like, for yourself, and I'm sure for our chat, we grew up playing PC games. We know about modders and custom levels and stuff like that. And when you're a modder, or when you're working on something along those lines, you're not really thinking about, does this work for the 18 to 30 casual demographic or the hardcore demographic. You're thinking about, what craziness can I build? And like we've said, that has led to just this insane output of creativity. I watch purposely troll levels in Super Mario Maker, you know, stuff that has like less than 1% clear rate. And that would never be in a professional or commercial game. There is absolutely no way you could fit that in. No. It's very, I think this is where things are very tricky about coming up with a good level. So I'm going to kind of throw you to the lion's den here. I'm going to ask you, Max, like, in your opinion, what makes a good level? Or what makes a good level, either like for combat or just good level design?
Oh man, you've just really thrown me in there. What makes a good level, man? That can change and range so much again on the game. But a couple of things that I think make a good level, and again, just to point out the difference, mate, is sometimes you're not going to be able to do all the points I'm about to mention, and that's because also, especially with professional and commercial products, you've got to understand, where does your level fit inside of the story, inside of the overall game process, right? Because if you're a level that's taking place earlier on in the game, there's certain mechanics you won't be able to use because they're not unlocked yet. But say in Mario Maker here, they can use any mechanic that they want. They don't need to necessarily care about introducing the mechanic. They can just use it. They can use it with different mechanics as well, or have as many mechanics as they want. You might not necessarily get that. But some of the things that I think make a great level is, firstly, pacing. You have to really understand the pacing of kind of the game and your level too. We just did on my channel, Level Design Lobby, we did what we call the level design weekend, where I give a task, kind of like a mock level design test for people who would be applying for the industry. And it was on Call of Duty. And what I found with all those who took part was that they basically made the level just combat from start to finish. And I understand it's a Call of Duty level, but one of the things is, we just mentioned there, is the point of pacing. You need the moments where you don't have combat, where you can take a breath, breathe, assess what's just happened and what's about to go on, and then push forward there. So simple things of pacing that. It doesn't even need to be stuff of you just stopping and not interacting, but you can have those moments where you do a nice, beautiful vista. I've just finished Final Fantasy VII, the remake, and they do a lot of beautiful vistas, especially if you go to Aerith's house. You see a beautiful scenery and where she grew up, and it's just one of those kind of like awe moments, which moves me on to the second point, is those wow moments. Like I said, that can be a vista. It can be something like in Call of Duty where they have these kind of, or Uncharted, where they have these crazy, you know, movie-esque moments where you're climbing a train, fighting in a sinking ship, you know, all of these. So think about what's the unique moment in yours. And again, just like the vistas, it doesn't need to be the big, like, what, explosions, bam, bam, Michael Bay. It can also be one of the most memorable moments in Last of Us. It's leveled by Peter Field, where you get to see the giraffe with Ellie. And that's one of the most memorable moments. And there's no, you know, horror element. There are other memorable moments with that. But I'm saying it doesn't always need to be that. So think about your pacing, your downbeats, your memorable moments. Then think about your mechanics. What is it that you're able to do with either a new enemy or a new mechanic? As I said, some levels won't always get a chance to do this, but if you do have that chance, think about how you introduce it, how the player masters it. Mario games are the best for that in terms of how they introduce, challenge, master, and twist it. They do all of that. So think about ways that you could possibly do that. Now, it's not always, like I said, a Mario game, but think about that. Think about what comes to it. I think also having the right amount of space. We talked about metrics earlier, but metrics are so important because if you create a space that feels too cramped, like imagine if you're playing God of War, the 2018 edition, and if you're in a place where you've got all these enemies swarming you and you're in like a very kind of a low ceiling cave, and you try to swing that axe, and that axe just keeps hitting the wall before it can hit the enemy, that's super frustrating. So you've got to think about it more in terms of how much space is it that I need? How much space does the enemy need? So doing that. And then finally, the one to me is think about how your level ties in with the story, right? And this, you'll work primarily with your environment artist, but sometimes you may not, if it's a personal work, for example, or something on Mario Maker. But think about that of, you know, well, what is happening here, or what did happen here? You know, there's an article I wrote years ago which was called "Where's the Toilet?" which is all about the context of your layout. If you're building a space that is in real world area, there's always going to be a toilet. There's always a toilet. So where is it? You know, think about that element so it grounds it architecturally as well. All of these elements play in. I'm sure I've missed some that other amazing minds in the LD world will, you know, have suggestions too. But it's tough, man. It's really tough to narrow it down. In another interview, we talked about like how do you get the player to enter that state of flow, and there isn't like a metric or a method to figure it out. It's a lot of gut feeling. So a lot of time it comes down to iteration, guys, and that's something I really want to stress. As I mentioned, that's why it's the final chapter in my book, is because you do not get your level perfect first try. That doesn't happen. I think I've only seen it happen once, and it was never by me, just for the record. So it's all about coming back, reassessing, rejigging, and retrying all of these elements. So yes, those to me are some of the things that make great levels.
Yeah.
I hope that helps. I hope, because I said that there's a lot of kind of openness for it, but it's also like I said, a tough one to figure out.
Yeah. And I think what is very interesting about, like, as you were trying to describe some of those major points, is that when I'm thinking about things from when I did my book on 2D platformer design, that I think about things from what is the theme of the level, can you design, you know, unique mechanics, you don't repeat elements, and can you end that level? You know, can you end it in a way that feels rewarding and gratifying? And like you said, and like what we've talked about many times here, there is no one size fits all. How something works in Doom cannot be applied directly to Dark Souls or to the Division or Borderlands or anything else along those lines. And it is very tricky. And about your discussion about where is a toilet, I guess, how does that apply to a medieval game? Where do you have to do a separate piece on that?
I mean, make sure that you've got your, you know, your famous number 2 bucket. I'll be looking for that, you know.
And I think, and I do want to get to a few questions that popped up in chat, but
Yes.
like just like keeping with that line of thought about grounding level design, like
Yeah.
that's another like topic in of itself, and that idea that this sense of trying to build this as a place, and I think that's one of the big things that happened over the last 10 years. Like starting from like Demon Souls and like games along those lines, it wasn't just about building a series of corridors or arenas, but about how do we design this place in a way that it looks like something that could have existed. And I guess this is a question I want to throw to you and to the chat watching. When you think about level design, do you prefer the grounded sense? You know, that if this is supposed to be a hospital, it looks like a hospital. It's not. It doesn't have 27 staircases and 58 rooms that all lead nowhere. Or do you like kind of the Doom style, where it is designed very maze-like? It's designed, I guess, quote-unquote, gamey, as opposed to being a realistic place.
I mean, again, it's that openness of what is the purpose of the game, right? And even now, though, when you look at Doom, even now they've got environmental storytelling in terms of in the first in 2016 Doom, you wake up in this satanic kind of ritual kind of area, and then it transitions, you know, like you still have in Doom Infinite, you have buildings taken over and hell and stuff. So I think even they've kind of transitioned, not fully, because I agree with you, there's still more maze and free like. But I mean, you know, Mario hasn't changed at all. Man, the amount of freedom where you can be like, and there's just a flying big bullet coming towards the player. I can jump on it, and where are we? Ice World, and all we do is paint the blocks blue. Like, you know, and that's not an insult. That's me saying they have so much freedom, and their games are so good, you know, with that freedom.
Yeah, if you look at like a Mario Galaxy, where it's just we're just cutting all the environment out, and we're just making these little pint-sized galaxies. And okay, here's a galaxy where you're dressed up as a bee. Here's a galaxy that's just literally Luigi in pixel form, and we're just gonna build it around that. Yeah,
that's it. And it's so different, right? Like I said, different games are different things. Now I've come from, especially from that of Ubisoft, you know, Division's based on New York, so I had to study and understand New York, how it looks. And luckily we got a lot of praise, and it wasn't just me, it was the whole amazing team that worked on that made it feel like it was New York. We got a lot of praise for that, which is great, because everyone worked so hard on it. But it is something that I tell, you know, aspiring LDs, is make sure you do your research on your architecture, because that's going to help. You know, there's the whole things of like boxy rooms, right? You know, like if you can see behind me, I know you can see my bed over there, it makes me look so professional. This is a slightly different stream. But if you look over to this shoulder here, do you see how that cupboard extrudes out of the wall and then it indents slightly further down as well? This room is not an entire box, despite it being, you know, a studio apartment. People who might just design it without doing architectural reference might just jump in and be like, okay, box room, done. No, look into that. Where's the pipes going? How is it they fit in the layout for the, you know, the bathroom? Again, I bring up, you know, these kind of elements that come in for it. And I think it's an important skill to definitely do that and understand it. You don't necessarily, like, there's a great quote from a friend of mine that I always stick with. We're not here to make things realistic. We're making them seem believable. So you don't need to necessarily make a hospital look identical to all the hospitals out there. You can change it a little bit, right? But as long as we can sell, oh, there's hospital, there's the reception desk, there's the patient's ward, there's the surgery table, this is where the staff's lunchroom is. You know, if we can sell all of that, you know, just with those few rooms, awesome. People might completely forget about a cafeteria. People might forget about maybe there's a psych ward for people to see counselors and that. But as long as we sell it with a few parts, people will believe it's a hospital. So it's that balance, you know, as well with it.
Yeah, and I think to Chad, they're kind of agreeing with it. It really depends, and
Mm.
you can do a. I think what's very interesting is that it's not really as limiting as you would think if you have to keep to a grounded style. You can
No.
do so much in that space. As you said, it's really about figuring out how does all this work. How
Yeah.
would somebody move around in this place? I forget.
Yep.
I think it was Ralph or Ralph Coaster who did like the game design Twinkie
Oh, right.
pieces,
Yes.
and he was
I
like
know.
talking about like who would design a house where the key to your bathroom is on the complete opposite end of the house
Yeah.
and stuff
Yeah.
like that. So,
That's it.
anything? Do you want to say something?
No, sorry. I was agreeing with you. Sorry, that was my bad there,
Okay,
mate. Sorry.
that's all right. So we do have a few questions from chat.
Mm.
So Randy Taylor asks, in addition to what makes a great level, what's the biggest no-no for a level? Biggest noob designer mistake?
I think box is one of them. As I said, just making squared rooms. That's a big. I wouldn't say no, but it's a very rookie kind of error. You can learn from it. Just for the record, everyone. When I say this, this is not to insult or to put anyone down. I made these mistakes. This is why I'm telling and sharing them with you. So the fact that you can learn from my mistakes and grow faster than I did. So just always want to make that clear, because I never want people to think, oh, this is impossible. I made these same mistakes, everyone. That's one of them. Another one, especially with combat design, mate, is if we kind of have a space, and I did this, combat area, and we have the player kind of in the middle, and then waves of enemies come from every direction at the same time. That's a big no-no, because it can just frustrate the player because they have no idea where to focus on, who is coming from where, and all of that. So that's a big one for that one. I think, as we talked about earlier, try not to make your levels completely flat. Do try to figure out how to raise it up. And especially if it's traversal, try avoid straight lines. I know in your 2D platformer book, it's different because you can go up and down, right? If it's 3D, try turn as well. You can go up and down as well, but try turn left and right. These kind of elements too for it. And I think the biggest rookie mistake I see is people trying to make like 7 levels in a month instead of doing 7 iterations on their one level. That to me is a big don't do that. It's not a competition of who finishes faster. It's a the thing that everyone wants to see is who's done the best level. So take that time, spend more time in actually making your level instead. That's what I think. Hope that helps.
Yeah, and like getting that iteration down is very important. As we've said, like tutorial design onboarding is such a very vital aspect when it comes to these games, because you can just, if you don't iterate on that level design, you can end up with something that it's just going to turn people off, or it's not going to properly onboard the player to what the rest of the game is all about. I mean, even like when we talk about Kaizo games these days, they go usually their first level, while it's difficult, it's not going to be completely brain melting as it used to be like 5-6 years ago.
Yeah, mate. No, that's it. And I did a video on tutorial design. There's a reason that they leave it to one of the last levels or section they actually build in the games. They tend to. It's because they wait till all the mechanics are down and then can understand, well, when do we introduce them, and kind of go from there. And then the other challenge of it is, how do you make an exciting tutorial that doesn't feel like it's insulting the player? Because we've all played games, we know how to move the analog sticks to look up and down, but they put that in there because, there might be a first-time player coming in. And it's these kind of things where how do you balance that as well as figure out how to make it part of a great story as well. So that's what, is always the toughest element with tutorial design for sure.
And again, that is another topic. And we're not careful, we'll be here for like 2 to 3 hours easily.
I know, I was like, man, it's just a can of worms here completely.
Let's see. Next question. Where is it? Oh, wait. Scroll up a little bit more. Okay, here it is. The Minister of Silly Walks asks, did you ever make UX tests with users before the actual beta phase? And what do you, and what, I guess, what do we both think about the participatory design in game dev?
So yes, there would be tests before we went to beta, whether it's by getting a teammate to test out, or if it's by having stuff like Ubisoft is great for having user test resources where they get people off, not necessarily off the streets, but ask people to come in and test the game in the state that they are. And what's really important when you're doing that, everyone, is just shut up. Do not say a word. Just sit there, listen, watch. If you have questions, wait till they've finished what they're testing and then ask them again. And especially if you do have questions, try to be as specific as you can. Because if you leave it like, oh, what did you think of it? People are nervous. You know, they're going to say, oh, yeah, it's good. Yeah, it was all right. But never expand on it. So you can say instead, what was it that you enjoyed the most in terms of this level? Oh, well, you know, I like this bit where the helicopter comes and attacks us. Cool, that's even better. And we now know it's the helicopter that's exciting them. And as I said, you don't want to guide them or say anything because it can just ruin the test. So just sit there and, you know, just be quiet and watch. It's a really big, important part, team.
All right, Dragon, see you later.
What was the second part of the question?
Yeah, it was about participatory design and what are our thoughts.
What do they mean by participatory design?
That I'm not sure. I was trying to see if like the basic definition would work, and the one that I saw is about project design attempting to actively involve all stakeholders in the design process.
Oh, okay. Do you want to answer the question first, mate?
Yeah, sure. I guess for myself, I think it really depends on the studio and kind of like what approach you're going for. Like when we did our discussion yesterday about virtual networking and virtual studios, we talked about how for smaller companies, they have that ability to be agile. Like you can have a meeting of 5 to 6 people relatively easy, or easier compared to some of the other stuff. When you have 50 to 100 to several hundred people, it becomes a whole mess of organization. That's when I think studio culture and kind of project management really comes into play.
I completely agree, mate. It completely depends on your, not only the team size, but your time that you have to make the game. Because if you have to do decision by committee every time you try and make a decision, that's slowing your game down by a few hours, because there's going to be debates all the way. Someone's not going to be happy at the end of that meeting. So sometimes you need someone to, you know, take that vision and run with it. So yeah, it's a tough one, but it helps. But again, it comes back to talking to people. You know, when you're getting your stuff tested, they're going to see something that you might not see, and that's going to make you rethink things. So it's never like, when we say that, it doesn't mean, nope, only one person decides from here. You'll get your chance for freedom, and someone else is going to always suggest something which you're either going to like or maybe not like. And it comes through to testing and seeing actually what works. Because don't just blow it off because you don't like it. Test it first. If you can get a chance to play it rather than someone explain it to you, try to do that every time. But yeah, I agree with you, mate.
All right. Next question from Rat's Tail asks, what do you think of the accordion style, going from bigger to smaller, smaller to bigger with your levels?
Accordions, I'm missing something here.
I guess kind of like pushing in, going in and out kind of thing.
Oh, sorry. Brilliant term. How did I not see that one? Thank you for the question, mate. So it depends on what you're trying to do with the level. Like, if you are trying to make it where the reveal of the arena makes it feel much larger, then do have a smaller corridor that you come through. Because when that, you know, transition happens, it makes the space feel grander than what it actually is. But it all depends on what's your aim for it. Because if you just keep repeating yourself over and over, that's going to become redundant and boring. But it's about like, what is the goal here? Do you want the space to feel bigger, or do you want it to feel like once the player gets away from the arena, they've snuck off into some sort of vents, so again it feels even smaller? As long as it works contextually, I'm fine with it. Just try not to repeat it every room, essentially.
Yeah, and it's definitely, again, when we talk about these kinds of, like, the flow of a level, that in of itself, again, like, each one of these topics is another 40 minutes to an hour long discussion. There's no way to answer some of these questions easily. And like, level flow, when we talk about from a combat standpoint, like, I guess when you think about flow in that aspect, when we talk about flow from a platformer, we're figuring out, okay, how is the player moving in that space? How are these obstacles set up to kind of, you know, test and challenge the player? When you think about flow when you're designing combat, what particulars, I guess, come to your mind?
I think, and I mentioned upon this in the book, everyone, is it's about getting the player in there, making them feel like they're in control of the situation. Now, again, depends. If you want the player to be ambushed, then you don't want them to feel in control. But if it's one where they are coming into a room and they need to clear it, for example, then I always think about, you know, if you think about Call of Duty, Modern Warfare, or any of their online versions, you know, when you get those kill streaks and then you get the reward, first the UAV scan, and then next is like loot drop, and then the final one is airstrike. When you get that, you're in that flow, you're in that zen state. And if it's a single player game, we have to think, how do we replicate that? Because we're not going to give the player rewards where they can just destroy the entire enemies. But the thing about it is, I always think about trying to make sure that the first enemy is an easy kill. Because, okay, we've made our first advancement. I feel good. I've taken down the first enemy. I'm ready to progress. And then next, you know, we need to think about, well, how do we up the challenge? Is that going to be in the numbers of enemies? Or is it going to be the challenge of what type of enemies we're using? Sometimes a very good traditional combination is that of a shotgun and a sniper, because the shotgunner will charge the player and push them out of cover that they may be hiding in line with that sniper's shot. And then they've got to dodge that and think about that as well. So balancing that, how does the player dodge and interpret what's going on, as well as them mastering the level itself. If we have stuff like flanking routes or higher ground, how does the player reach that in order to go take advantage of it? Or do we take away that state of flow and make the player feel panicked and change it by the enemies using those flanking routes? So there's a lot that goes into it, but it's the thought about beat by beat in the combat, and also how does the combat fit in terms of the context of your level too? Like, how do you use that to either restrict the player or empower them, and how do they get those opportunities? That's how I believe it goes there, mate.
Yeah. And again, I'm trying to resist like so many conversations, because we'll be here for like 2 to 3 hours. And Max, what time is it for you right now?
It's almost 11, so we probably will wrap this one up here, if that's okay with you, mate.
Yeah, because we'll take Max at like 3, 4 o'clock in the morning, and he's got work tomorrow as well. So yeah, it is for time check wise, we just hit a little over an hour. Would you say like maybe 10 to 15 minutes would be kind of like your wrap up point?
Yeah, if we can do 10, that's cool for me.
Okay. So in that case, I really want, if you are free, I definitely want to have a discussion about like enemy design when it comes enemy design and enemy philosophy in terms of levels. So I'm trying to, if I say that now, we'll definitely not make it in 10 minutes. So let me get back to a few of these questions that popped up, and then we'll see where we get to. So Cosmic asks, he wanted to know, how old are you? Just wondering, how many years have you been doing level design?
I hope I look really young in this camera, mate. You know, they say it adds 10 years to you. So I am currently 28. I've been in the industry for just shy of 7 years, coming up, give a couple of months either side. So yeah, almost 7 years in the industry now, mate. Worked at 3 different studios and almost 10 games now is what I've worked on. But in terms of, I'm currently now in AAA. And yeah, worked on mobile, augmented reality, indie as well previously before getting into AAA. So yeah.
And I am 645 years at this point. The camera.
Who's counting though,
Yeah,
right?
exactly. Chris asked, if you do have many levels to create, as you said, and he said this a few minutes ago, with iterating on that one level, would you suggest creating a first attempt at each level, then iterating one at a time, or just working on one at a time until you feel like you've iterated on enough, and then start working on the next level from start to finish? So I guess he's asking, do you prefer to work on levels kind of like, I do a little bit of this level, I do a little bit of this level, and so on, or I'm going to build level 1, start to finish, get it all done, move to level 2, start to finish, repeat, and etc.
Yeah, so for me personally, I like the element of having, there's a terminology used which is L0, L1, L2, and then it goes to alpha, then beta, then gold/release. So what I like to do is I like to have basically an understanding what L0 or L1 is, and then I will work on each level to get to that particular benchmark. L1, for example, L0 is you just have the bare bones, so it has the spaces that the player can go to. It's just the walls and that. There are no props, no nothing. You kind of have like maybe some sort of colored square or circle, which is the interaction type. So we know if there's an interaction that's there. Maybe you just have red squares for this is where the enemies will, the combat will take place. L1 is, okay, well now we give context to the room. This is the props that there are. This is where the interaction will be more. These are kind of the actual placement where we put enemies when the player arrives, and these kind of things. So I always like to have rough idea of what the benchmark we're working for, and then kind of go through section to section with each level, because each time you go to like if you're going from L1 to L2, something new's most likely come in. So it could be something of like, okay guys, we now have working AI. Great, so now I need to switch everything out to the working AI, because otherwise, if especially in a professional setting, if you're working on this and you're trying to get it all up and up and up, you might be missing elements before you can even go in to actually bring it to the final product. So that's how I like to do it.
Yeah, and I think that kind of being able to like do each one little bit at a time, I think that's very important from a management standpoint, because as we all know, what your first, as you say, like your first draft is not going to be your final draft, and it's very easy to kind of get locked in and say, okay, I've completely finished level 3, and then what happens if, let's say, on level 4 I add something that needs to be explained, I need to go back, but wait, I just hard locked all the timers and everything in, I have to change all that. I think it's kind of like the opposite, like when I write my books. Like, as I said, I go for this outline approach, so I typically go, okay, I want to finish section 3.1, get it done, edit it a few times, and then I don't want to think about that section ever again. Let's move on, because I run into that issue of I just keep going over and over on my work, and then I'm just like kind of stuck in a loop, and I'm not moving forward there. But again, I don't have to worry about having to update previous sections with something that I wrote later. So it is a different methodology there.
Oh, for sure, mate. And the other thing is, as you said, because you know what's in that book, right? Someone's not going to come into you and be like, have you thought about adding in this? Or I've just come up with a great new rogue system. Maybe you want to talk about it. They don't do that. While here also, when you get those new mechanics or those new elements, and say you add it to one of your levels, and then you go, oh, I understand it better now. So when I visit my other level, I can actually try out that thing I've just learned about from my previous area I've just worked on. So you get to master it better too. So yeah, that's what I recommend for people, because I think you're bang on, mate.
I think what you just stumbled on, I should live stream my book writing.
Yes.
And I can just like have people just comment every 5 seconds. Josh, why aren't you talking about this?
Yeah.
Josh, you can add this. Why aren't you finished with this book yet? Get good at writing.
If you had someone watching your process, mate, everyone would just cry and not write over at all.
Yeah.
That would be like, nope, not today, kids.
And let me go back up here. This is not so much a question, but kind of a... Well, actually it is, but Highlander Pony was talking about the idea of is there a term or a definition for games that kind of like when they design their levels, like they start like 85% easy or medium hard, and then the last segment is the super hard gatekeeping wall section that if you die you have to repeat the previous sections to get back to it. Now I haven't heard, I'm definitely horrible when it comes to like terminology, but is there anything like you've heard of or people have referenced along those lines?
There isn't a term for it. They're more doing it in the sense of, especially like a JRPG, where they do it where, there's a boss that has 7 final forms and you have to restart the first one if you die. That one's them tweaking the challenge element that we added. It's like in combat, another element that you can make your combat more challenging is just throw more enemies at the player. It's the equivalent of that, right? Where it's like, okay, the challenge is now not to die versus where you could have forgiving checkpoints previously. But in terms of terminology, I've not heard any kind of specific one that relates to that.
Mm-hmm. I know what he's referring to. Again, like that's something that we see from a lot of mechanical or technical based games, where if you fail that final section, you're repeating the previous part. A Bloodstained Curse of the Moon 2 did that very same thing, where the checkpoint, the final checkpoint on a level is still like 2 to 3 screens away from the final boss. So if you lose all your characters at the final boss, you're going 2 to 3 obstacle base rooms back, repeat that, die. And checkpoint design, again, that's another 40-50 minute topic.
Oh, for sure.
Again, like this is one of those tough points about this, because we can, like I said, like for the people watching, like this is the beauty and nightmare about talking about game design. There is no there's no quick answer to some of these topics. We can just ramble for until the morning comes. Like when we did our roundtable last night, all I said was people talk about if games are art, and that was a 20-minute discussion between the panel on a throwaway line.
Yeah, these can go so many ways, but yeah, mate, that's it. It feels like a cop-out answer for those for those who ask the questions, but it's, like I say, it's not. Sadly, there isn't a one-size-fits-all, and there's a lot of thought that goes into it. And also, what might work for one game might not work for another game. Different genres, different rules, different kind of emotions that the creators are after. So yeah, it's a shame, but also, like you said, there's beauty to it as well, because everyone gets to interpret it differently.
So I guess here's my final question. I think this will kind of... I don't even know how long this answer is going to be. We'll see. But... Okay. I wanted to kind of ask you, like, so you said we've been talking about kind of the flow and philosophy of level design. So I guess to kind of end this cast on, what I wanted to ask you is, when we talk about design, we've already mentioned designing the starting level of the game, the importance of onboarding, the importance of playtesting, tutorial design, etc. Any thoughts on the final level? Because the final level in of itself is very tricky in terms of its design, because we've seen developers approach this, I guess, in one of two ways. There is the grand final test. We're going to take everything that we've done and we're going to ratchet up to 11. The other way is we're going to just create some brand new crazy situation that you've never done before, and we're going to kind of throw you to the wolves, and this is your final gauntlet before we give you the pat on the back and say, good job, you beat the game.
Yeah. Oh man, I've not worked. I have not worked on the final level, so in terms of experience, on construction of one, I can't say that I have the experience for it. But yeah, mate. Again, I'm going to use the cop-out answer. It depends on the type of game you're making, but it's about kind of the crescendo, right? Where, and this is where games are different to, say, books or any other type of medium. Like you said, you can discuss if it's art or not, but it comes from that mechanical side too, where it's not always just about the story meeting it, but it's also coming from the point of, like you said, the player has learned these new mechanics either throughout the game or in this new encounter. So we've got to challenge them and test their knowledge, their mastery of these mechanics as well. And that's the coolest and kind of hardest part to figure out. So yeah, I don't know if I have anything to really say what makes a good or bad final section. Like I said, I don't have much experience in building it, so I don't really want to say without having the actual knowledge of doing it.
Okay.
But it's I've never made a tutorial and I haven't made a final level either. So when I do, I think we'll come back and tackle this, put our two heads together to figure it out properly. But sadly, I don't have much of an answer on this one, I'm afraid, matey.
All right. And a last-minute question came in that is just too good to not ask you. Is backtracking just lazy level design? The Minister of Sleepwalks asked.
Minister, no. It's how you do your backtracking. That's what it comes down to. It's how do you change things up, right? I talked about the level design weekend earlier and what we do with the Call of Duty levels, but there's an example of what one of the designers did was because you had to fight from one side of the cargo ship to the other side to free the hostages. But during that time, there's supposed to be a typhoon coming in. So when you kind of come back out again, the typhoons hit the boat and it's changed the layout completely because the containers that were all ordered and stacked have now been blown over, blocking the path. So even though the player's backtracking again, the layout's changed completely differently. So now, well, okay, how do I learn this new layout? That's cool, that's exciting. Or if you're coming through, or if you leave the space from a new exit or a new viewpoint, that's a cool one too. Or if you've got a new mechanic and that opens up new routes, I don't think it's lazy. It's about how you execute it, though. If you go, for example, if we're just talking just simple terms of a traditional Zelda dungeon, Legend of Zelda dungeon, where we pick up the treasure chest and turn around and just go back the way we came, yeah, that's bad. That's bad design. I wouldn't put it down to laziness. I'd just call it bad design. But if we've got a new mechanic, which now our way out is now blocked the way that we came in, but we have to use the new mechanic to traverse through the space because maybe lava has risen in the volcano where the dungeon took place, that's cool. That's perfectly fine. So yeah, it's all about execution at the end of the day, mate.
Another popular example, like from games that make use of time travel, is revisiting an area in a different era, and finding maybe a pillar that was down is up, maybe an area you could walk through has been destroyed, and like you said, like we said in chat, like being able to come up with ways of changing it up. It's not just you going left to right, right to left. And like Metroidvania design is a really good example of that, especially when you go from the beginning of the game to the end of the game, you have all that new tech, and then suddenly it's like, I don't have to walk on those platforms. I can just double jump into a wall, jump, teleport, and I just complete it in like 3/4 of the time. But again, like if we're not careful, I'm going to keep you till sometime tomorrow. So I do just want, like, for people interested in the book, I just want to ask you a few just quick logistic related questions, and then I will let you have your final thought, and that will do it. So
okay, mate.
Like we said, Let's Design Combat is out now. There are links to the book down below in the description. So I guess, have you given any thought about a second book? Again, when it comes to writing, it's always about, you're writing your book and what are you thinking about the next 2 to 3 books?
So yes, I will be starting the second book, which is going to be about traversal and exploration, and that will be coming in, well, I'll be starting writing it in November and be releasing it in Q1 of 2021 is the plan. After that, I haven't figured out what the third book is going to be about yet. I have a couple of topics, I just haven't nailed it down. But yes, I want the series to be called Let's Design. The first one is obviously the Let's Design Combat. Second one will be called like Let's Design Exploration, and turn this into a level design series where these are great kind of bite-sized chunks that people can always come back to, pick up, revisit, and just reuse whenever they feel necessary. So yes, I look forward to making this a great series for all aspiring level designers.
Yeah, I right now have roguelike, that's what I'm working on, and then horror's coming after that.
Oh, okay.
And I have a whole list, and hopefully I can find that list of as many genres I can pick from and
Oh,
write books about. So, again, the
awesome.
beauty about this is we're going to be busy for a very long time.
Yeah, for sure. But I mean, again, the beauty of it is hopefully not only do we get to be busy, mate, but like hopefully people will like them, and you've done some great work. The fact that this is already your third book shows that people are enjoying your work, mate. So keep up the amazing work, man.
So, do you? I have the links down below. Is the book available on like Amazon or like major retailers?
So yes, I still think it is waiting to be approved by Amazon. So maybe give it a day or two. But what I find is with the links that we have down below, these help me much more because more of the actual profits come to me, which overall helps me even more to reinvest into the next few books to make these even better. So if you do want to not only get your hands on the books now, but want to help support me for the future of the series, please do purchase from the links rather than say Amazon, just because, like I said, more of it will come to me so I can reinvest it into the future of the series, guys and girls.
And there are links to my 2 books down below as well if you like to invest in me as well. So
That's it.
Any social media, any sites you would like to plug before I let you go?
Yeah, sure. So if you want to follow me on Twitter, where I do more bite-sized level design tips, you can find me at Max Pears, like the fruit, MAXPEARS. If you want to hear more of my smooth jazz voice and learn more about level design, then head on over to my podcast, which you can find on YouTube, Spotify, Apple Podcasts. Just search for Level Design Lobby, and you can find me there, guys. So please come over, and I hope to see you all joining me there soon.
And I just posted in chat, apparently someone's messing with my level design. The sky's getting very dark outside the window. So I think there's a set piece about to happen around here. So, Max, again, it has been a pleasure talking with you tonight. Again, congratulations on the book. And if you are free in between all the writing and level design that you're doing, there are still so many more topics we can talk about.
For sure, man. I'd love to come on for sure. We'll get it arranged again because it's absolute blast talking to you, matey.
All right. So, everybody, we're going to end things here for the cast. Again, be sure to check out Max's book, though there are links down below. In the recorded version, I'll have links to his YouTube channel as well. For those of you watching this, whether it's live or recorded, thank you so much for tuning in. Be sure to check out the Game Wisdom Discord channel link down below, as well as, again, my books and Patreon. If you are a developer working on a upcoming game or just want to chat design with me, we are always looking for new guests for these live, recorded, and our roundtable casts. With that said, I think that's all I have to say. So once again, thanks for tuning in, and come back for daily discussions on game design here and on Game Wisdom, where it's in the art and science of games. Thank you, Max, for the emoting there in the corner as well. But everybody, have a great rest of your day.